such a fuddy-duddy. Bartholomew's not a stranger. Why, we've spent the entire day with him." She turned to Bartholomew and told him she would be delighted to join him for dinner. From that day on, they were inseparable. 2 months later, on the day Bartholomew was discharged from the Navy, they were married. Anita, who was Ruth's maid of honor, never once cracked a smile. Bartholomew got a job making $28 a week at a warehouse where he and 37 other fellows created replacement parts for tractors. Confident that good times were here to stay, he and Ruth moved into a 2-room walk-up and bought a used bedroom set and a brand-new radio. 9 months later, the warehouse closed its doors without paying the men their final week's wages. "Don't worry," Bartholomew told Ruth. "I'll get a job, a week, 2 at the most." But other than strength and a willing heart, he had no skills. A month passed, and he found nothing. First, they sold the radio, then the bedroom set. After that, they moved to a furnished room so small Ruth had to walk sideways to climb onto her side of the bed. For 3 months, Bartholomew looked for a job. He left the room early in the morning and returned long after dark. He went from door to door, asking for work. "I'll do anything," he said. "Wash dishes, mop the floor, scrub toilets." But he always got the same answer. "Nothing right now. Try again next week." At night he'd drag himself home, ashamed of returning empty-handed, but so weary he could barely manage to slide one foot in front of the other. Ruth stretched what little money they had and made every penny count. She ate the tiniest scraps of food and used a single tea bag for a week, leaving it to soak in the hot water just seconds before pulling it out and setting it aside for the next day. There were no more movies, no dinners at restaurants, no ice cream sodas. Many nights they shared a half can of Campbell's soup. Ruth would eat 2 or 3 spoonfuls, then suggest Bartholomew finish the bowl. By that time she had begun to look pale and hollow-eyed. Several mornings in a row she could not hold down even the weak tea she'd brewed. But when Bartholomew asked what was wrong, she simply smiled and shrugged it off. When he finally insisted, Ruth told him she was carrying a child. That's when Bartholomew made the fateful decision, the decision he swore he'd never make. It was the one place where he knew he could find work. The same work his daddy and granddaddy had done. They packed one small bag and walked to the railroad station. Using their last $3, Bartholomew bought 2 tickets to Coal Fork, West Virginia. That spring, Ruth gave birth to a baby boy, and they named him Paul. "He'll grow to be a man of wisdom," Bartholomew said. "As soon as he's old enough to speak, I'll teach him what he needs to know, so that one day he'll leave this mountain and never look back." Before the boy was 3, Bartholomew's hands had become blackened and his soul weary, so it fell to Ruth to teach the boy, and she did. The second year, Ruth planted a garden behind the house. She grew corn, tomatoes, string beans, and summer squash. When the bounty was harvested, she planted turnips and potatoes. She planted more than they could eat in a summer, and when there was plenty, she cooked the extra and packed it in mason jars, sealed with a layer of wax. She continued to do it year after year, so Paul grew healthy and strong. She nourished the child's body with the food she'd grown, and his mind with words and stories from the books she loved. Then the summer Paul turned 9, Ruth again grew pale and queasy. Most mornings she'd turn away from the strong coffee sitting atop the stove and drink only a cup of weak tea. Even then she'd start to gag moments after the second swallow. "Do you think possibly—" Bartholomew glanced at her stomach. "After all these years, I doubt it," Ruth answered laughingly. But by November, she knew for certain. By then her breasts were swollen and tender. She could not stand the smell of tomatoes, and even the briefest glance of raw meat made her retch. In late December, Ruth felt the baby move for the first time. It was different from the way Paul had moved. He'd shifted himself slowly from side to side in movements that were barely perceptible. This baby kicked at Ruth's ribs as if it were anxious to be free. "This one is certain to be another boy," Ruth said, laughing, "and a feisty one at that." Pleased with such an idea, Bartholomew began thinking of what he would call the boy. Bartholomew trusted that choosing a name from the Bible brought special blessings, so each night he sat in the rocking chair and turned page after page, looking for the right name.